I meant to send this to you. I forgot to send this to you. It was like at a Mariners game.
Yeah.
Like a Seattle Mariners game.
I know where the Mariners play.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe he doesn't. I'm here to help out everybody, okay? He just got here. Fucking leave him alone.
Is the Mariners a fishing team?
Yes, they're a fishing team.
Fishing. It's fish. Yeah, see? He has no idea what we're talking about.
You're right. You were good to explain it.
He has no clue. Anyway, I just thought this was totally on brand for the Seattle Mariners. They had like a Windows 95 startup screen. It was like a blue screen of death and then a Windows 95 startup screen with a sound effect.
Oh, no.
And then it was like an old PowerPoint popped up, and then somebody just typed into it, like, let's cheer now, right? And they just moved the window around, and everybody went nuts. I was like, this is such a Seattle thing. It's so awesome.
Quiet, please.
Meanwhile, the OG designer of PowerPoints in the stands
four,
going like, fuck it.
3, 2.
Company presents a truly terrible podcast. Welcome to Nonsense, Season 2, Episode 23. I'm Jeff Parker.
I'm CJ Little.
This is our take on the week's business, tech, and entertainment headlines. This time, we'll look at Apple's Worldwide Developer Conference.
Yay!
It's National Sewing Machine Day. Do the names Elias Howe or Isaac Singer mean anything to you?
No, I'm not a seamstress. Why would it mean anything to me?
If you've ever taken a home ec course, or even worn clothes for that matter, they should. These two gentlemen are credited with the invention of the modern sewing machine. While the wheel, telephone, and personal computer get a lot of the glory for changing how humans live, the sewing machine is somewhat of an unsung hero. Without it, we'd still be squinting to thread needles and stitching together our shirts and suits by hand. Dream up some custom couture or some blackout drapes and celebrate National Sewing Machine Day today. How's your week going?
It's going great. I'm, as you well know, I'm up in Cupertino for the Worldwide Developer Conference.
It is very bizarre trying to talk to you when you're not here.
Do you miss me?
I do miss you. I miss the donuts.
You miss the donuts mainly.
But,
yeah, I know.
But yes, I miss you.
I know
too.
what you really miss. I was going to Uber some to you, but then I decided that then you realize I could be replaced by a $12 cab ride.
Sure.
No, it's been great. So Worldwide Developer Conference is this thing Apple does once a year for their development community. They really put on a great show for their developers. They have volunteers from Apple Corporate who are here. They have volunteers from the Apple stores all over the world who are here. And the level of energy is kind of insane. It's like an 11 out of 10.
Why are there volunteers from Apple Corporate?
Just folks that want to come, we'll talk about engineering for a specific part of the product line or whatnot. Like it's folks that...
but isn't this their job? Isn't this what they do? How is this volunteer work?
They're snowflakes. You got to be careful. You don't want to tell them that. You want to make it more. You want to make it feel like volunteering. You're like, anybody want to volunteer to write some code this week? You're like, I'm a software developer. What am I doing writing code? That's kind of your job.
Suddenly being a corporate executive at Apple is church work.
But it's nice. So I was at Apple Park and before that at One Infinity Loop, which is the OG Apple campus, for those that don't know.
Yeah,
it's really nice to see them giving back some of the 30% of revenue they take from all these developers. It's nice to see that coming back in the form of some free cold brew and chicken and waffles. That felt kind to me. No, but I thought it would be fun today to bring in a good friend of mine and one of our best nonsense supporters, Mr. Patrick O'Neill. He's, for those that don't know, and I'm sure everybody knows, he's Apple zealot and evangelist. He's the inventor of the Holoclip, which effectively created the category for easily attachable lenses to iPhones. And if you were ever in an Apple store going back to the iPhone 4S days, you saw his product sitting on the Apple shelves alongside like the Apple design kit for almost a decade, which in my opinion is about the best compliment an accessory product can get. Like when Apple puts it in their store.
Surviving a decade in the Apple store is amazing.
Surviving a decade, but also doing it in the Apple store.
I used to tell everybody, this is Patrick,
This is Pat, yeah, that's a great introduction.
I'll introduce myself.
Start talking. Hi, Pat, how are you?
But I used to tell everyone, it's hard to get into the Apple store, but it's even harder to stay in the Apple store.
Oh, I'm sure.
You've got to earn your place with every product, with every new release of the iPhone. Being in the Apple store was amazing. Working with Apple is incredible. Great people. Great place to sell products. I mean, we sold millions of Holoclips through them, so it's great.
Well, this next part of the intro is going to go great. This is where I say, anyway, he's my go-to reference for all things Apple, and I ran into him up here at the Worldwide Developer Conference, and I thought it'd be fun to pull him in and get his take on this year's developer conference.
That's great.
How about you, Jeff? How's your week going?
My week's going great. I'm excited. You wrote this script for me here. I'm so excited to get my first iPhone after seeing WWDC. I can't wait. So much advancement. What have I been missing all these years?
It sounds so authentic when you read it that way. way. Have you ordered a new iPhone, or are you just staying with the other stuff?
Believe it or not, I was on the iPhone right up until 4S. 4S was
right
my
when the
last
Olo
iPhone.
Clip came out. You were like, "Fuck this!
The
I'm
Olo
getting
Clip,
off." The Olo Clip
as soon as I
pushed you
saw that in
away.
the stores, that was the end. I was done.
Well, now I feel awkward putting you both in the same room. But what could go wrong?
We're not in the same room.
Putting you in the same the same phone call, the same connection. Anyway, this is Pat.
I'm going to step out of the way basically here. I wasn't at WWDC. You guys were. So why don't you guys go ahead and I'll just ask questions or occasionally pop in when there's something I don't.
You watched the thing, right? You watched the little video thing, right?
I did it. I saw it 5 minutes later than you did. They
So you were
delayed it
behind.
5 minutes so that they could cut out all the curse words that you slipped out when they cut to you.
Did it feel like you were in Ohio? You got to see everything 5 minutes late. What did you think of the Open, by the way? The airplane, Craig jumping out of the airplane, the little iPod Classic. Well, not even the Classic.
It was
the
cute.
quick wheel.
It was fine. It was it didn't blow me away. Like, I mean, a lot of people really liked that thing, which was great. But for me, it was like, that's all right. You know, it was cute.
I did post on Threads about 5 minutes before that thing started. I said that I was, quote, hoping for an iPod Nano relaunch.
Yeah, I saw that.
And then 5 minutes later, you have the iPod pre-click wheel.
Yes.
And I was like, well, I was close. I had the right genre. I was just off on the product. But I thought it was really cute. Like the little plane, Phil flying the plane, and
People jumping out.
Craig jumping out of the back. I think my favorite joke in that, I'm gonna not to spoil Pat's, was the turning off airplane mode while he was jumping out of the plane. I thought that was cute. Got a good laugh from the crowd. Pat, what did you think of the Open?
I thought it was great. Craig's always funny, and
his
Phil,
parkour skills are on point.
Oh, they were very good. Flying the plane, Phil. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Does Phil he just can't do more than 30 seconds of recording? He's just like, that's it. That's all I want.
Well, they just bring him in for special occasions, and they don't want to give too much Phil.
It's hard to get him off the private island and
I don't think Craig will let him have more time than that.
Part of the reason is Craig is so good at those presentations. Even Tim Cook just does his little introduction and quickly hands off to Craig.
Yeah, it's great. I like the hierarchy of delivery where like one hands off to you can just see the levels of hierarchy all the way down, and then they pop the stack and go all the way back afterwards. At the actual on campus, when we were watching the keynote, they have Tim and Craig both came on before the video to just sort of introduce it. And of course, Craig said a bunch of shit that everybody knew wasn't true. There was going to be no jokes, and it would just be a straight delivery, and where it's just all facts, and a bunch of just groans, and then you get into then you hard cut to an airplane flying over Apple Park. I will say I was sitting in the sun, which was nice for the first 45 minutes and not nice for the last 45 minutes. But I could see up. There was no covering over me, so I kept looking up. I was like, oh, they're going to drop somebody in at the same time, I'm sure, as this video is landing, but they didn't. I was very disappointed they didn't drop in.
Or just little prizes or something. some little giveaway.
It's like
thing.
Oprah, you get a MacBook and you get a MacBook.
Yeah.
So what? That wasn't real, CJ?
It was not. I hate to dispel it for you, but it was not.
That didn't happen?
It was not real at that time. They did not. They may have jumped out of a plane.
Speaking of parachutes and weird things being dropped, North Korea is sending packages of feces to South Korea in little parachutes.
Well, they should stop ordering it.
Is that what they're doing?
Yeah. If you don't want the shit to get delivered to you, don't order it.
What a bizarre world we live in.
Is it? I mean, I feel like they're literally just out of shit to send. Like literally, they're like, what do we have the most of? They're like, well, we got a whole bunch of crap. And like, all right, well, just send that. Maybe it got lost in translation. Maybe the leader said, just send them a bunch of shit, and they took it literally. What he really meant was like a bunch of his old, I don't know, potato chip collection in his garage.
Back to WWDC. I didn't mean to interrupt you guys. Go ahead.
Sure.
Siri, you guys were both blown away by Siri and the changes that they've made. It'll finally do what they promised it would do 14 years ago.
Okay.
Right? I mean, it looks like it will.
Yeah, it's been slowly growing. I think what really happened is they had to see the amazing success of the Rabbit R1, and then they were like, oh, that's what it could be. That terrible piece of shit. We could be that. I think the Siri improvements are pretty good. I think it's probably going to set a new bar for Assistant, but that's a function of ML and ultimately the Apple intelligence system that they're laying it on top of. I think that's what's going to make it the most interesting.
I like if you're wearing the Earpods, you can do the Sony thing where you can shake your head and nod, and the
Sony thing. I like how you attribute all of these back to something
Sony
else.
does. The Sony headphones do that. It's a great thing. I think it's great that Apple's going to use that. I think that's awesome.
The new Siri looks very good, though, and I think they're going to make a lot of improvements with it, and it's just going to make the whole experience of owning an iPhone much better, especially with the integration that they're putting into it, where it's going to take a deep dive into
apps.
Most of the things you work on, apps and all of that. It's going to change the experience of using an iPhone, I think, pretty dramatically.
They focused a lot on that, and during the platform conversation about specifically app intents, being able, as an application developer, being able to expose your app intents and get direction from Siri into that so that you can control things, which is pretty compelling. I think, especially when you combine Siri with what we'll talk about here in a couple of minutes with their AI implementation, the local AI implementation, it gets extremely powerful. Like the voice interface is the future of how you're going to interface with these things, right? I mean, it's the current future.
Sometimes called the present.
Improving that's going to be pretty spectacular.
I can tell you on the Google side, because the AI thing is so, I mean, I don't know how much of it's happening local on the phone. I don't think much of it is, but it really, really has improved how you interact with your phone in a big way.
Yeah, so that was the biggest thing to me was their implementation and approach to AI, and taking one that is primarily, and what we suspect we've talked about here on the show before, is primarily local. So you have your context is established locally from all the things, your emails and your conversations and whatnot, and that's kept and processed locally. And then the majority of what you do, so if you're generating, they call these like Genmojis, which is a generative sort of icon, kind of like an emoji, but something you can generate from a text prompt. That's all happening locally.
The cool thing that I think what they did with the Genmojis, obviously the problem is when you're doing image generation, is you are going to create some images that look real, that are deep fakes. They've solved that problem by just by locking you into animation style, illustration style, or sketch style. Modes. They're all very cartoony. You would never confuse this with something that was real. I thought that was a fairly good way to approach that
to solve the problem. Yeah. I mean, to me, it looks definitely like a foot in the water sort of approach, right? You're starting with this. Maybe they'll add different looks later, but you're sort of starting with this.
And it's obviously other places people can make deep fakes. I mean, it doesn't get rid of the issue of deep fakes, but at least they're not coming from your machine.
Yeah, and the fact that it's happening local is really compelling. I'm the most interested, especially in their AI pitch, for what they're calling this private cloud, which at first when they pitched that, I immediately rolled my eyes. I'm like, what is a private cloud? Like, okay, guys, come on. What they're talking about is making the images that are on those machines publicly reviewable by some modicum of experts, which how that's delivered will be interesting to me.
That's not the same as open source. By the way, what Craig said exactly was, because I wrote it down, the quote.
Yeah.
He said, just like iPhone, independent experts can inspect the code.
Yeah.
No independent expert has ever been able to my knowledge, has ever been able to inspect the iPhone code. And that's not the same, by the way, as open source, where all of us can inspect the code.
Yeah, of course.
But the great thing is, Apple is understanding, the light is going on at Apple. There is no such thing as security that is closed source.
It's going to be harder to buy into it if you have this black box. So I think this is a good step.
If that moves Apple toward open source, I'll be really the first one applauding loudly, because I think that would be great.
I don't see a world where you're going to have this quote private cloud be open source. I think what you're going to have is a barrier to entry that folks have to sort of cross, right? You're a researcher at XY whatever organization, and then you can get on the list and you can inspect it, and you're likely signing an NDA. And
the minute you say no, this is not,
you're not on the list. That's the problem.
You're bounced from the list. Exactly.
That's the problem, and you're no longer getting paid or the grant money or whatever the thing is that you're getting. So the detail, like the detail that implementation will be key.
It's not the same as open source yet, but the good thing is they do realize,
right?
Yes, the good thing is they do realize there's no security that isn't open source. They're on the right path.
It'll be curious to see if you as the user have control over when those things go out to the cloud or not. They sort of implied that. They didn't show it. They showed it with ChatGPT, which is a whole separate thing we'll talk about here in a second. But for requests that you make locally that require this private cloud, it was unclear to me if you've got the ability on a per request basis to allow that. My hunch is it's probably like a system-wide setting where you just say like, nope, it's either all on or all off. And you can either do it when it's needed or not at all. That's my hunch as to how it'll be implemented, but who knows? This shit's all still in a state of vapor in some regards.
Well, it'll all come along, and it's all going to change too. What you can do, the large language models that I have seen running locally on phones, they take way too much RAM. They're awful. They're absolutely awful.
Of course.
But that's a moving target. Your next phone's going to have more RAM. Your next phone's going to have more processor. It's going to come along just great.
I'm nowhere near the details of this, but they had, I just haven't had time. They did talk about some optimizations they've made in 16-bit models and putting those into like what they call a 4-bit quantized model that was allowing them to run like an order of magnitude faster with about a third as much memory, which was great. They said you still got to tune it. Like when they're talking to developers, when you transform your model into this 4-bit quantization, you still have to tune it because it can give some bad results. But I thought that was pretty compelling that they're looking to make it more efficient. So it's not, it doesn't just have to run in the cloud.
Well, generally, I think we're going to get better at making large language models run on less.
Oh, for sure.
On less hardware. That happens.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, you get more efficient with time. By the way, I don't know if you've seen, like for medical uses or things like that, the small language models.
Yeah.
Super useful. Super useful. Not everything has to be a large language model.
Yeah, exactly.
Those kinds of things could run locally on a phone nicely.
Pat, what was your interpretation of the Apple Intelligence?
No, I liked what they were saying about privacy because I've been very concerned about privacy. In fact, I switched.
Oh, yeah.
I've been using Evernote since 2008 for my notes. And I was concerned because they were sold to an Italian company a couple years ago, and they recently had fired everyone in the U.S.
Yes.
Then I saw where they were starting to talk about AI in the notes and saying, oh, if you do this, we can help you with AI. Do that. We'll help you. At the beginning of the year, they put out a new terms of service saying, you must accept our new terms of service by February 15th. And if you're still using the service after that, we will assume that you do accept them. And so I deleted all my data. I got it, exported it all out of there, got everything, and told them, no, thank you. And I moved to some new notes apps, and because I'm very concerned, I've got 5,000 notes about all my ideas.
Your business ideas,
products.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, my business ideas.
I've read most of those on Twitter. They've posted them on Twitter. The little bot keeps kicking them out on Twitter.
So I was very concerned that Evernote was going to ingest these into a LLM, and all of a sudden they were going to be training people when somebody has an idea for something. Yeah.
Now, listen, you bring up Evernote, so I got to ask, what do you think of the new Notes app? It looks like they've done a lot of amazing work on Notes.
No, I think it looks great. I think it does look good. I did try to use it for my notes, but because I had 5,000 notes that were 7.5 gigabytes, when I imported them into Notes, it really bogged down.
Brought it to a crawl.
And actually, I was using it on the Vision Pro. It would crash the Vision Pro headset when I would launch Notes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, I had to do bug report submissions to Apple a bunch of times, and eventually I just had to delete those notes out.
Sure.
Oh, so that's good. So not only does Bending Spoons, the new acquirer of Evernote, not only do they have all of your notes, but now Apple does too. That's great. I'm sure some of these products are going to be brought to market here real soon.
Yeah.
Apparently, Notes works great. Just don't have a lot of notes.
Yeah, I actually met a couple of the note-taking application makers at the event.
Yeah.
This is before the announcement, the day before the announcement. And I was like, oh, this is cool. They told me some of their features. I'm like, this sounds really interesting. I want to check this out. Check it out on the iPad Pro. And then I saw the announcement and I was like, oh, your business might be having some troubles ahead. The new note-taking app, what was most compelling to me was the handwriting, not only sort of, I'll call like copying of the handwriting, but like it would straighten it so it looks more like your handwriting, which is really weird.
Just making it a different version of your handwriting.
Yeah, like a cleaner version of your handwriting. But then the fact that you could paste text in and it puts it into the same form, I thought that was super compelling. And then you layer in the generative AI that they announced as well. And I'm like, this is really compelling for writing stuff down. There is a part of my brain, though, that thinks about how much fucking processing power is going to making your typed notes look like fucking paper notes.
Sure,
and that just makes me giggle.
You're turning 40 tops into a yellow pad.
Yeah, exactly. Like we've come full circle to make it like if we make it look more like handwriting. You're like, well, you could type it and it would look more like typing.
I can also just scribble on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I mean, Apple's made these really powerful Apple Silicon chips. They might as well put them to work, and you might as well benefit from them.
Absolutely.
So I think it's a good thing.
No, that's the hardware software dynamic, right? Without a doubt.
I'm not saying it's not a good thing.
I know you're not.
I'm being silly.
I know you're not. I'm just stating the obvious.
I don't like when the daddies fight.
I think all the NPUs that are being put in all these chips, just absolutely remarkable. By the way, NVIDIA has a chip. We talk about 40 or 45 tops, trillions of operations per second. NVIDIA has one they just released that is 2,000 tops.
So
it's for self-driving cars.
So it's 2 cops is what it is.
It's mind-blowing is what it is.
Right? Isn't that after trillion? Isn't it quadrillion? I don't know. So 2 QOPs. Cops? I'm stuck on this.
Quips.
Language is hard.
I mean, does it drain your car battery in about 1 second? That's what I want to know.
You turn it on, and your range goes from 300 miles to 300 feet. That's what happens. And anyway, the Notes app was really cool. I haven't used it yet. I think Pat has. I'm compelled by it. I still don't know where you land for Notes though. So Pat, you said you're using Apple's Notes now.
No,
for all
I'm
your notes?
using Bear. It's called
Bear. You're using Bear. Yeah,
Bear
okay,
Notes,
that's right, you told
and
me
it
that.
syncs. It uses your Apple iCloud storage
Yeah,
to
cool.
store your notes.
Yep.
Because where Evernote would store your notes on their servers, and I'm like, I don't want anyone storing my notes. I consider
Well, you
iCloud
trust
storage
them
to be
less.
my.
Yeah.
I trust Apple more than anyone
Exactly.
else.
You trust Apple more than anybody else.
And
is what it comes down
I
to.
consider that iCloud storage that I pay for as being my storage.
Because Apple has such a great privacy, they've never had any issues at all with that. They're
That's
so
correct.
Yeah, you got. I
trustworthy.
was going to direct you, Pat, to all the warrants where they've been asked to turn over data in the iCloud, and
There's
they turn
that.
it over all the time.
Yeah, well, there is that.
There is that. But I still, look, I'm, this is something that I don't really want to go out on the air. I'm going to agree with Pat on this. I think in terms of all of the players that don't require a ton of work and where you're not having everything local keys, whatever, Apple's probably the best. I think they're the ones I trust the most, more so than Google. I don't know, Microsoft might be on that list too. I've dumped all my shit into OneNote, which is not fantastic, but it works.
Yeah.
And I feel less concerned about them scraping all my content.
I have zero trust in any of them. I don't think when it comes to security you should ever trust anyone. And so I do use Google Keep for notes, but it's all stuff that I'm okay broadcasting to the
that's
world.
kind of the
I
same
wouldn't
thing.
put anything in it that I didn't want to broadcast to the world. Things that I want to be truly private, I'll zip with 7Z with a strong password, and then I can upload those to a cloud for a backup because you aren't getting into it. It's fine.
And then never see them ever again because good job searching that.
So the quantum computers arrive.
We cracked
Right.
that.
Oh, exactly. It's an arms race for sure.
Okay, so what else did we have? We talked about notes. We talked about this is a big one. They have figured out a way. I've tried to find the team there, but they don't. It's very hush hush. I guess they don't like everybody that works at fucking Apple. My friends that work at Apple. I'm like, what team do you work on? And they're like, research. And I'm like, research of what? And they're like, research. I'm like, fuck you. So I just make stuff up, by the way. This is a total aside. When I'll introduce somebody, I'll introduce my friend Ben, and I'll be like, hey, he works at Apple. And they're like, oh, what do you do? I'm like, oh, he works on the pause button. Just make shit up because then they have to deny it, right? They can't be no, I don't work on the pause button. What do you do? How I work in research.
I can neither confirm nor deny I work on the pause button.
I tried really hard to find the group. It's one of their Apple Skunkworks groups, but I think they're doing so much deep research that they just don't let them out for these events. But I tried to figure out the guys who are working on the Windows tiling because that sounds like it's really exciting where you can tile not just on the half of a screen, but I think you can do quarter screens too. They figured out how to do that. So to me, I don't know what it looked like at home, but at the event, it was just indistinguishable from Magic.
Of course, window tiling.
It looked amazing.
Sure,
so they could go to the top left. And by the way, the whole time I'm seeing this, I'm like, well, there's another app I don't need to pay for anymore.
Because you had to have a third party for it.
Yeah.
I mean, Windows is tiled for forever. Linux is tiled for forever. My KDE desktop has been tiling for forever.
My experience has been...
By the way, there's 100 things like that they announced that they should have announced.
100%.
Those things
I agree.
absolutely should be put into... you want me to badmouth Apple for putting in things that are already in Android?
I'm teeing these up for you.
I know, but I think those things are great. They should have those things.
I have two takes on this, and then I want to hear Pat's. I have two takes. The first is I feel like they do these things they do a very minimal amount of what's out there in third party, and for good reason. They're like, here's your basic tiling user, but if you want more advanced features, you still go to the third party market, right? They don't shove all the features in sort of a poor UX way. They leave this to other folks who have refined them. So like the ones I use Divi all the time. They haven't replaced Divi. Divi is a window management or window tiling app that is completely different than what they've shown. I will still pay for Divi. It'll still be lovely. But I also think my other take on this is I feel like they put shit like this in there to get people to talk about that, to badmouth the tiling as opposed to going after some other, whatever AI. They troll the reviewers.
I can't badmouth it. You're gonna like it.
Tiling?
Yes, it's really handy.
Well,
There's nothing to
I've been doing this
badmouth
for
about
20
that.
years. This isn't new to me.
No, of course.
Might be new to other people. Anyway, Pat, what did you think of Windows tiling? Did it confuse you?
I missed that bit.
You just glassed over it.
I got some more popcorn, I think.
Yeah.
I had to change the battery in my Vision Pro.
Talk about glossing over shit, right? Like tiling had 8 seconds of airtime. What got less airtime and is arguably way more important was RCS. RCS, they were just like, oh yeah, an RCS is coming, and that was it. They literally had one
because
sentence.
they're being compelled to put it in. I don't think they want to put it in. So they
I don't think you want to put attention on it too.
If we're going to talk about things that barely got any time, Vision Pro 2, the new OS for Vision Pro, they couldn't have blown through that any quicker. I mean, they
did seem to go pretty quick through it. I haven't used it yet.
I'm using it.
Pat's
using
running
it.
Yeah,
I'm running it.
What do you think, Pat?
I think it's not that different from the.
That's what everyone says.
Yeah, but
everyone says it's like a step up there.
I would call it more of a
minor update.
I've been running the 1.2 beta for a while, so this feels like more like a 1.3.
Yeah,
but they added one feature that I did try that they talked about that was really cool was taking a regular photo and turning it into a 3D photo.
The spatial,
and it's really, it does a cool effect while it's doing it. You see this like sort of scan going up and down and around the image, and it makes a noise. It kind of goes. Woo,
did you get a cool did it give you a good perspective?
Yes, it really made some really cool photos. I mean, into 3D, and it was. I mean, I could see it being really special for some people.
For sure.
If it's like a relative who's passed away or something, to really feel like they're there. It was really pretty fantastic.
I mean, there are some people doing that with videos, like old home movies, and I think that's even more compelling. I'd love to see them get there as well.
I did try it with some old film photos that weren't scanned at a very high rate, and it wasn't as cool an effect. So I was thinking an app that upscales those photos and then turns them into 3D will be something cool.
Sure.
And Apple's not going, like you said, they're not going to add every feature to these products. It's like Halide, who's like a pro camera app. And I met the developer while I was waiting in line with CJ for one of the parties. And that app is a really cool pro camera app. And Apple's not going to add all these pro features to the camera app because they don't want to make it confusing for the average user. So people that deliver something that is good for a small subset of people are not going to have their product taken over by Apple.
I don't think so. We'll take some things that were single use.
Obviously, some do. And
like what was the one
don't,
like Night Shift, right? That's a great example. Like there was no integration of that in the iOS or Mac OS ecosystem at first. You had a separate app that did it, but it was a single feature product. And then once they integrated that to the OS, for the most part, I'm sure they captured most of the customers of that. They got, quote, Sherlock.
Right, but I mean, it's like, Apple should add features to their products.
Of course.
Just because somebody does an app that does a one thing, I mean, that's a one-trick pony app, and it really, it shouldn't exist. And it's nice that they brought that and they did that, and they beta tested it for Apple. At some point, Apple's got to add these features just to make the operating system easier to use, because if you've got 500 different apps that do one thing, that's going to be a nightmare for users.
Of course.
And that's not going to make the experience better. So Apple has to do this. They've got no choice. And they should do it.
I'm really glad that they continue to. Also, transcription. There's a decent amount of talk of transcription from either like voice memos, or the one that I thought was really interesting was from phone calls. Live on phone calls, you could do transcription, which I thought was great. That is I think a very useful feature. I think more transcription, especially to make stuff searchable, is pretty compelling.
The part I liked about that, there's been transcription for a long time from phone calls and from notes, but the part about it on phone calls that I like was Apple automatically notifies all parties.
Yeah.
We're transcribing this call. We're capturing this call.
I'll be curious to see how they do that. If they just do it at the start of the call, every time you add a caller, do they do it continuously with like a reminder beep or tone?
By the way, not every state requires that notification, and so I think that's really great of Apple to put that in.
Yeah, this is you're talking about two-party versus one-party consent.
Correct.
And what's interesting about that, though, is my understanding of two-party consent is you only have to say it once or play a tone. You have to do one or the other. You don't have to do both.
What's the tone? Is some magical tone we're all supposed to know means we're being recorded?
Yeah, I think if you don't notify up front, you play there's like a beep every 10 seconds or something like that says you're being recorded. I'm curious though if transcription feels blurry to me compared to recording, right? Because it's transcription. I mean, yes, you're taking the words out, but it's an output, right? It's a transformation. I'm curious where the law lies on that. I don't know. I'm sure they're going to do it to be safe, but that's always been interesting to me. Transcription versus recording.
Well, you keep the recording if you want something that you're going to.
But if you don't, if you just keep the transcription, do you still have to notify? Like if I'm talking to you, if you and I are talking on the phone and I'm writing everything down that you're saying, in California, I don't have to give you notice, right? I can write everything down.
Your transcription's not going to fly in court.
It's if I record it, I can't. Well, if I transcribe, to me, that's gray. That's in the middle. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what the law says about that. Probably nothing because it's behind.
Well, it kind of feels, I know what you're saying. It kind of feels, I thought about this with those AI pins that people were coming out, where you wear it and you'll be talking to people and it records the conversation and transcribes it, but it has to record it to transcribe it, right? So that recording is part of the process.
Yeah, but I mean,
is that? Yeah. I don't know what the law says about that. Like you said,
if you don't keep the recording, I think if it's ephemeral, you're not at too much risk there. But the output of that to me is risky, right? The output of that is the words you and I said. But again, how's it different than me writing it down? Don't know. That's interesting to me.
It's because it's automated, I suppose. It's complete. It's
because
accurate.
It's good.
Although it's not. Right. It's not really proof.
But it may not be accurate.
That's right.
There's going to be plenty of times where it's not accurate. Trust me, transcriptions of this very program look ridiculous.
Yes,
because we talk over each other all the time.
Totally. And sometimes I look at those transcripts and they're like really funny, and I'm like, man, it got this wrong. That right there looks like humor. Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was a very cool and compelling feature. back to the Gen AI, some of the generative sort of images and generative text, the ability to take like a blob of text and then give you different tones of it, I thought was very interesting. I want to see how that comes out. This gets closer to the idea we've talked about on this show about these personality overlays, right? We had talked about like how you get your AI to act like Samuel L. Jackson or Sam Kinison.
It's all I want. It's all I know. Sam Kinison.
I know.
I'd like Sam Kinison too.
That one's pretty easy to do. It's just a lot of uppercase. It's a lot of uppercase and yelling. That one I feel like we could probably knock out pretty quickly.
Sure.
But it's very interesting to see that they're sort of tapping into that where you can have different tones and then summaries. I love, of course. Jeff, you and I have talked about that before. Being able to do summaries of blobs of text.
It's shocking how much I use that. By the way,
what's your biggest use case for that? Where do you use that the most?
I can't tell you how many people send me long political articles or articles about anything, and it's 50,000 words or 60,000 words, and I would love to spend my afternoon reading your article. That would be great. But I have a little button that I can push and say, summarize this for me in about 200 words or 100 words or whatever.
Sure. Now, if there's a little drop down that said summarize as Samuel L. Jackson, you would just click that.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and it would be like, get these motherfucking donuts off this motherfucking whatever.
Well, I can have it do that if I'm willing to talk to it and say summarize this as Samuel L. Jackson, the voice of Samuel L. Jackson. I could do that.
Also, the other thing I noticed in the generative AI is they've integrated a bunch of these sort of photo editing tools that we've had for a while outside of the ecosystem. They put into the ecosystem, and I thought that was pretty compelling as well.
Yeah.
So
the only thing I have to say about it, because we have it on the Google side, and it's great for things like if there's a group of you and you're taking a picture of a group and you take a bunch of shots, and in this one this guy's looking down, and this one this guy's looking over, and you could put your thumb on the guy's face, and then you get all of the faces of that guy from all the different pictures. You can pick which one you want to replace, and that's really good.
Sure.
You will never use this for commercial level photography.
Oh, of course.
Zooming into it, it doesn't look perfect.
So I'm actually really glad you brought that up. This is something I wanted to talk to you guys about. What did you think of the video quality itself of the whole keynote? Did you think it was great? Do you thought it was okay? Yeah.
Considering they shot it on a phone.
What the hell's your name? Pat, what did you think?
It's 2024. It better look great.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I was watching it in my Vision Pro on a 120-inch TV in Joshua Tree, and it looked great.
Meanwhile, he was in a fucking basement bathroom somewhere in downtown San Jose. Interesting. Okay, I am assuming I am wrong about this, and you're both going to tell me how I'm wrong, and I'm okay with that. I was very distracted by what I presumed, what my brain interpreted as extremely fake bokeh.
Yeah, of course.
I felt like all of the people...
Fake bokeh looks awful.
Especially when they would push in. So they'd push in, and you'd have like a shoulder and above shot of someone.
Yes.
I felt like the edge around them was very artificial. And then you get to the imagery behind them, and there was no soft roll-off, right? It was just like blur.
Let me explain really quickly to the audience who does not, who are not photographers. Bokeh is when you have something in focus that you focused on, and everything else around it at different levels of depth are now out of focus. So it draws your eye to the in focus thing, the subject of your photograph. Smartphones have been making fake bokeh for years now, and it just looks dreadful. It looks terrible.
Classically, bokeh is a function of optics, right? It's you have a focus plane, and that's what's in focus, and the optics have typically slowly rolled off bokeh, so as you get farther away, things are more out of focus, and that's how my eyes like to see things.
Right.
When I was watching the keynote video, I was constantly distracted. I'm watching on a giant screen, on a big, so maybe it's different if you watch it on a laptop. I haven't rewatched it yet, but it felt distracting because I felt like everything felt green screen to me. Everything felt like it was rotoscope.
Because everything is at one level of blur.
Exactly.
Real bokeh has multi levels of blur based upon how far away it is from the field of focus.
But you were able to see through that. It didn't distract you at all.
Oh, it annoys me, but I've seen it so much. I mean,
so you're used to it?
It's not anything that's unique to the iPhone. It's bad everywhere.
Of course. Pat, you're a camera guy. What do you think?
Well, it's funny because Marquez Brownlee, who's one of the big YouTube tech guys, was there. And he took a picture of his WWDC badge from up above.
Yeah, he does every year, doesn't he?
And there was a bunch of people he was like on an upper level in Apple Park. Yeah. He was taking a picture down with his focus on his WWDC badge. And then you see all these people on the ground, way off in the background. And the bokeh was really awful. It was really, really annoying. And
okay, you got your Google dig in. Now let's talk about the fucking keynote video.
Yeah, but no, he said he was using his Google phone.
Yeah.
Or his Android. Yeah, to take that picture. It's S24 or I can't remember which one. It doesn't matter.
S24.
But it was really off-putting, and I looked at it and I go, oh, I can't watch this. But I mean, I didn't notice it in the Apple keynote, but but I'm sure. Well, I didn't notice it. I'm sure it would have bothered me if I would have
tuned
looked at it. But yeah, because Jeff nailed it. I mean, what you guys are saying, it's exactly how it works. It's
of course.
It's a function of the f-stop, the distance, the focus. And then the
But
blur.
the phone, it's not. On the phone, it's not.
Because
It's
the
all
sharpness,
just a function of-
the sharpness falls
This is
off.
in focus.
Yeah.
Everything else is not.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it's all not in focus to the same degree.
Right.
Just they don't judge, they don't know the distance to all those people, or especially if they're far in the distance, they just go.
I mean, I think it's cool that they shoot on an iPhone, but like, can we just use a real camera for the shooting on the thing? Like, is that okay? Can you just get some Canon kit or I don't know, something else?
A little Arri Alexa.
Maybe they use the Apple Spatial,
Yeah.
the Apple Spatial cameras for the.
Yeah, for the immersive video.
I'm going to go the other side. You're going to think that we've completely switched seats here. There's a filmmaker, Steven Soderbergh, who has used iPhones to shoot entire movies. He's picked subjects that fit.
Yeah.
Where someone is like mentally ill or whatever, they're being deceived or gaslit. So that bowed lens and that fake bokeh
interesting.
really work.
Yeah, it complements the scene that you're shooting. it
So
sounds
I think
like.
there are things where that stuff really works.
I love that they do it. I think it's cool. I think that because it shows you what can be produced with that kit, and it makes it very accessible for creators all over the planet. But I was like, it's on a big screen. Like it could just look
Right.
better.
If you're shooting something that's supposed to be realistic, if you're shooting something that's a sales presentation, you probably should be shooting it on a real camera.
I was truly distracted by it.
Yeah.
It definitely distracted me, but I'm 100% sure I can get over it.
I mean, if you're a professional Hollywood director, you can set up a scene with an iPhone with real bokeh, and especially if you're using add-on lenses, so you can make it happen.
But he's not. I don't know if you've ever seen him shoot those things.
He doesn't put any add-on lenses on it. But
It's literally just the phone.
you
phone
still
cage.
can get a real bokeh. So if you've got the, it's all how you set up the scene and how close the people are to the camera in the background, how far away it is. So
how do you? Is it the aperture's so small? How does
you can
it-
turn those features off too, the fake bokeh.
Yeah,
You
no,
don't-
I know
like
you can
especially
turn
if you
that off.
use
Yeah, sure.
like
Everything just looks flat.
There's a new app called Keynote that the Halide
Yeah.
guys made
Yeah.
that just came out, and you can shoot and log, and you can have full manual control of the camera. So that setting the focus precisely and having the actors just where you want them to be on their marks and the background set perfectly, you can achieve something interesting. But that's too much work for anybody that's not a
It's not too
real
much work
director.
for a fucking $3 trillion company. Like you could make it.
No,
By the way, I don't think this is not unique to Apple. This is not Apple's problem.
Yeah, of course,
This
of
is
course. I understand.
This is
Yeah.
everyone who's making fake bokeh.
I'm making the comment that it is, quote, their problem because they choose to do it with the iPhone, and I just think it could look better.
because they choose to
Yeah.
use it. Yeah.
But I understand it's not a technology.
They put it in your face.
Yep.
I get it.
The reason all the smartphone companies have to do this is because of physics. On a
I
big
understand.
camera, you have big sensors, you have big
Yes,
lenses,
of
you have
course.
big apertures.
I get it.
And you're using tiny sensors, tiny lenses,
Yeah.
tiny apertures. You can't really get as much bokeh as you would with those big cameras.
This is not a comment about it not being done in the tech. I think what they've done in the tech is super cool. It's a comment about the production of a video that goes out to a very large, base of people from
We're
the
all having to watch this. Go ahead and make it look better. Yeah, I agree.
second most valuable company in the world.
You need to write a strongly worded letter to Tim Cook.
I'm not going to bother.
Okay.
I will send him an RCS message from my S24 that I will buy just to communicate with Tim. And speaking of cameras, the other thing that was pretty cool, thinking about, Pat mentioned this earlier, immersive video for the Vision Pro is they announced with Blackmagic and Canon, a new lens from Canon and a new camera or two from Blackmagic to shoot this stereoscopic video. So that's pretty cool for creators that want to create stuff in full immersion. That looked pretty compelling.
I'm really interested to see where this Vision Pro thing goes. They blew past it so fast in that presentation. I kind of went, "Ooh, that was really cursory." It almost felt like they were distancing themselves from it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they had a lot of stuff to talk about, and maybe the Vision Pro stuff isn't quite there.
They did. They crammed a lot into that presentation for sure.
I'm assuming, and by the way, the Vision Pro just fucking came out like 4 months ago. Like, it's not like it's been sitting around.
6 months ago.
February.
2 plus 4 is 6.
Yeah,
It's
that's
6.
right. You're right.
Oh, I can do math in my head. I can
you're
sometimes
good.
do double digits too. What else do you guys want to know?
I mean, I don't think they're distancing themselves from it. I think it's just, this is a long-term project. They've invested billions in it. They're going to stay the course.
Hopefully that's the way they see it.
They
I
even
think so.
announced that they're going to roll it out in Europe and Asia in the next month or two. So
late June and early July.
Yeah, it's coming right up. Yeah.
7 more countries, something like that.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like I didn't actually appreciate till Pat told me. I didn't appreciate that you still couldn't buy it in those countries. I thought they had just been slowly rolled out. I didn't know that you couldn't.
U.S. only.
Yeah.
And the joke everybody's making is that will up their tens of users to 12s of users.
Oh, 12s of dozens. They'll be well into the dozens, right? There'll be several people in Europe that will have very nice paperweights to hold down their paper stacks. Their A4.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I see it as a product that's for early adopters and developers. So this isn't, for the random people. I think, the price, it's very expensive. It's not for everyone. I think this is a chance for people to make really cool apps, really cool accessories. I wonder who might be working on that.
If only we knew somebody. If only we knew somebody good.
Yeah. So, we're at iPhone 1 right now with the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
And I don't think the iPhone really hit its stride until iPhone 4.
Yeah, I think that's right. I agree with that.
So
I have to assume, much like with the iPhone analog that Pat's giving, 90% of the shit made for the Vision Pro isn't going to make it. It's not going to be compelling. It's going to be, stuff that's just not interesting but was worth trying. 10% is going to be super compelling and long lasting. But you got to make the 90 to find the 10, right? You got to make it all. And I'm assuming that's the state that we're in. Like, I see a bunch of people that are kind of taking their existing app and shoving it into the Vision Pro. And I'm like, I don't think that's a compelling experience. But they might find something else that's loosely related to that is a compelling experience. And I haven't used, Pat, have you used the DJ app, the one that won the...
I downloaded
haven't used it yet?
I haven't used it.
It was one of the award winners for the VisionOS. It was these guys that have had an existing DJ app for like the iPhone and iPad, and they ported it over to the VisionOS, kind of just direct at first, and then made it spatially aware. I haven't used it yet, but I watched the video of it. I talked to a couple of the developers. It actually looks kind of cool. Like you can be a DJ with decks in front of you, and I guess practice or learn the process of being a DJ in AR. And I was like, okay, that's kind of compelling. That's kind of neat. Pat and I were talking about some of the apps that allow you to like take stuff apart. So if you want to see how was the one you were talking about, like a turbine engine,
right? Like a jet engine on a 737 or a Formula One car,
right? Like if you want to learn more about that, that's pretty compelling.
My airline gets upset when I do that with theirs, so this is better.
Yeah, I just come on and go, okay, the Vision Pro is saying you got to put a bolt here and a bolt here, and I like to just say that,
and it'll keep the door plug from flying off.
And then they say, "Sir,
feet.
please just sit down."
And you shouldn't have any leftover bolts.
Yeah, you should not.
Check your pockets, please.
Here's the thing: if you have leftover bolts, for the love of Christ, say something.
Yeah,
just
throw them in the
somebody.
trash. Just throw them in the trash.
Just put them in your lunchbox. Take them home.
Take them home.
Put them with your Tesla bolts. You'll be fine.
I'm going to just wrap up this conversation about WWDC and say, as with all of these presentations, the demos always look great.
Yeah.
I'll be curious to see what the actual products are like and how useful the actual products are like. I say this with it's not just Apple, it's true of every company.
Sure.
Everybody's demos look amazing. And so you have to see what the actual how useful the actual stuff is.
I have typically found Apple to not do much vapor. Typically what you see in this is pretty well baked and coming.
I'm not suggesting it'll necessarily be vaporware. I'm just saying some of this will end up being not as useful as other things. That always happens.
I'll tell you what looked like vapor. There was one thing that looked like vapor in that whole pitch. Pat, do you want to take a gander at what I might be talking about? There's one thing that felt very vapor-esque. Maybe not vaporish, but like not well thought out or done.
No, I've got nothing.
The ChatGPT integration looked like somebody put together a fucking screenshot in the past week. Like a mock-up.
Oh, but that's probably true.
Yeah. It is probably true.
They didn't have that deal for very long.
And I don't expect them to have boiled UX right now, right?
None of that's going to be hard. Yeah. Yes, none of that's going to be hard to integrate.
But that was the one thing here, as I'm sitting here saying everything, oh no, they like, it's pretty polished up. It's how it looks in its final form. I was like, the ChatGPT thing was just like some intern doing a mock-up.
By the way, I'll be surprised if they don't put, in addition to ChatGPT, I'll be surprised if they don't do a deal with Google and put Gemini in there as well.
I think so as well.
They'll probably put a lot of models
in there. Yeah.
They said they're going to put a lot of models in. And actually,
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, I'm running all the betas on all my devices too.
Yeah,
I've got on my iPhone, my watch, my Mac, my Vision Pro.
Which is why I had to call them 3 times this morning because nothing works, nothing rings.
How old is your phone, Pat? What iPhone do you have?
Oh boy, here
it's the same age my phone is every year.
You get whenever.
I've had every iPhone.
It's his claim to fame.
Okay, so you get them when they come out. CJ, how old is your phone?
Mine is a 13 Pro, so it's about 2 years old, 2.5 years old.
So you don't upgrade every year.
I don't.
But you're probably due for an upgrade.
I am.
The nice thing is you won't, if you didn't get a 15 Pro and you got a 15 regular and all this stuff doesn't work, in your case, because you'll be getting a new phone, all this stuff will work.
I typically wait 2 or 3 years. Every single iPhone I get is the best iPhone I've ever had.
Well, sure.
It really is. No, but I say that in a little bit of jest.
Everybody says that, and it's the most, it's the stupidest thing. You're never going to go backwards. iPhone is never going to make their next phone worse.
But no, but I kind of disagree with that because I get the phone and I'm like, this phone does everything I could possibly want. There is no way to make it better. And then the next year you're like, okay, well that's better, right? And I find if I skip a couple years, I get a little more wow factor, and I just don't like. The only thing I think I would use on the 15 Pro now is spatial photos. Spatial photos are pretty cool.
Spatial videos too.
spatial
kids.
videos, yeah. So that I'm kind of like, I should get that. But I mean, I'm still catching up on doing 4K video on proper glass for my kids. So like, I don't need more kit. I need more fucking time and more hard drive space, not kit. I would like to we're just rounding out this Vision Pro and talking about the end of WWDC.
Yeah.
I had several moments that I thought were really fun and some of my favorite moments. One of them was when I walked down to the Rainbow Arch, which is super cool and definitely bigger in person than I thought. There were two guys wearing Vision Pros standing in front of it talking to one another, which I thought was comedy. And I just walked right up to them, didn't say anything, and just started taking pictures of them. They're like, hey man. And I was like, what the fuck are you two doing? And they're like, oh, we're capturing content. I'm like, of each other? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. So I got a photo of them with actual, one of the Apple social folks was there. And I got a photo of her taking a photo of them. We titled it VisionBros. And I thought that was hysterical, that it was VisionBros.
Did you ever wear your Vision Pro in public yet?
I put it on once when I got it, and then I put it back in the box. Anyway, WWDC was great. It was a lot of fun. Jeff, I think next year you should come up. We should try to get you converted. If not, you can hang out with Marcus and use your silly phone to take shitty photos, and we'll go from there.
You know, Marquez, for all his phone reviews, does use an Android phone as his primary phone, which I think is interesting. You don't see many of those at WWDC.
Yeah, they usually frown upon.
They're usually
them,
not invited.
Yeah. I think he's got enough reach.
It is frowned upon.
You got to put him in there.
All right, we have to get out of here, but it'd be silly to talk about what we've seen or read because we just did. So that's the episode.
Thank you for joining us for All This Nonsense, a truly terrible podcast with Pat O'Neill from The Awful Company. Visit us on the web at nonsense.productions. I am CJ Little.
I'm Patrick O'Neill.
I'm Jeff Parker. A quick reminder that we are off next week, but back June 27th.
If you like this program, please follow, download, subscribe, and like at Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, AntennaPod, iHeartRadio, Spotify, my personal favorite, Overcast, or wherever you may get your podcast from.
Nonsense uses the Arch Linux operating system with the KDE desktop for its editing systems. Infinite customization for maximum productivity with no ads and no bloatware. As always, open source and free. Special thanks to our floor director, Pat O'Neill.
For being a guest and a floor director, first time ever. I appreciate him doing double duty.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
They'll be here every Thursday morning for more nonsense.
Please join us.
What'd you think? Is that an okay episode?
I think it's good, and I listened to all of them. I think it's amazing. I think it's even better than normal.
Because you're on it.
Correct.
Okay. Fair enough.